have a potential tornado on the ground in south central
Very
County.
serious situation.
Yes, I need a phone. I got a tornado.
Starting to scare me.
My memories were, it was a day I never thought I'd ever forget.
Could do some major damage. That is not good. That's unreal. Look at that.
My daughter was working here at the time, and as I watched this tornado come, all I could think about was her in this tornado shelter. I joined her later, and we hugged each other and kind of said goodbye.
A few minutes passed and it got really loud. Everybody was screaming and praying.
I just remember the ceiling tiles shooting up into the air and then just dropping back down.
I got out here, looked up at my house, noticed it was okay, and then I was scrambling for somebody to give me a cell phone because I knew that my mom and family were up there thinking that I was not alive.
Kind of walked outside and just kind of stared, and everybody was just numb as you're going out to the highway. I mean, you just can't imagine something like that would happen and do that kind of destruction.
Once we realized we're all okay, then it was a matter of finding your way out from the shelter through all the rubble. And we're not just talking wood, we're a metal fabrication business, so there was beams or sheet metal, cars, everything was strewn around. There was no path to get out, so we literally had to crawl over sheared sheet metal. And just that fact alone is amazing. No one even got cut that required a stitch. It truly is amazing.
The Parsons plant was the idea of owner Bob Parsons.
It had been years in the making, ever since Parsons worked in another building, an old airplane hangar, which sits just across the road from where his property is today. Now, the motivation was to keep his employees safe and his company viable. Well, that's a story you may not believe.
And back in those early days, in the early 70s, a smaller tornado actually went overhead of that small airplane hangar and blew out the windows. And at the time they had no place to go, so Bob, as he was going to start building new buildings across the street, he knew he had to have a safe place for employees to go.
Making sure his employees were out of harm's way was just part of ensuring the business would stay in business, and recovery from any disaster, man-made or natural, would be seamless.
Protect the employees is number one, but our business is based on information, and without that information, we wouldn't have a business. So our IT manager, who is our chief operations officer actually too, designed backup systems and actually redundant systems on top of redundant systems. And so in the eventuality we would have any sort of disaster, we would have those backups. We didn't anticipate the entire building being destroyed, but fortunately for us, the backup systems were in place and recoverable.
A lot of our customers wanted, I mean, they were asking us, what's our recovery plan? And, I mean, how do you recover for something like that? I mean, there was nothing there, period.
Before we had a temporary office, we had all the salesmen and sales secretary out here. They had all the contact names. They called everybody and let them know what was going on.
We were still trying to move parts that we had in the past, trying to keep our customers going, helping them move those parts elsewhere. And we had a lot of our employees that were helping get the building back up. We had a lot of employees that within 30 days' time, we were already at an off-site facility manufacturing parts to still keep our customers going.
He really just wanted to make sure that we all had a job and that while we were down, that we all had a paycheck coming in.
I don't know that it surprised me what we did after the fact. I mean, just knowing Bob for years, I mean, it's wonderful what he did and how he had a plan for us, but it didn't necessarily surprise me just because of the kind things that he's done for us in the past.
After Hurricane Katrina, it is estimated that nearly 70% of local businesses closed forever. The biggest contributing factor? Loss of business data. Hurricanes, floods, fires, and tornadoes are natural disasters, and they can put you out of business if you don't have a plan to recover and move ahead.
We think that there's two types of disasters. You've got the natural disasters, right? And everyone thinks of the Katrinas or the big F5 tornado that just really wreaks havoc. And those are major disasters, but those happen fewer and farther in between than some of them. And we see that small businesses are more affected by man-made disasters. That may be sabotage. You recently fired an employee and you forgot to cut out access and they've gone in and they've deleted everything. Maybe on the way out the door they stole something. Man-made disasters or man-made events are going to harm small businesses more than a big disaster will be.
Looking back at the Parsons manufacturing story, it was clear they had multiple plans that kept them viable after the tornado and fire. These plans can be melted down into two very important categories.
Business continuity is where your business will continue when an event happens. And disaster recovery covers that when the event happens, I go to the shelf and pull my disaster recovery plan off, and then I start working to execute my plan. So business continuity means that there would be no lapse in your business. Your business continues regardless of the event.
Parsons did their due diligence while putting together their business plan, and near the top of their list was to evaluate how much risk they were willing to take in the event of a disaster. Companies today need to figure out how much risk they're willing to accept as they put together their plan for a disaster and what that risk is worth to them.
We recommend that business owners do risk analysis and determine how much risk they're willing to tolerate. That usually will drive a price. That then can help decide which type of technologies that I can use.
Jenkins says figuring out your risk will lead to how much your company can afford to protect its most valuable asset, its data. He says plans come in all shapes and sizes and prices, so don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions and get clear answers that will make it possible to choose a plan that is perfect for you and your company.
Do I go with a tape backup? Do I do an online service? Do I do a recovery service? We talked earlier about business continuity. Some services just back your data up and out in the internet just as a tape backup. But then what happens when my server's gone? I've got my data, but again, I have to build my environment. Some services now offer recovery where they back up not only your data, but they back up your systems and software and your hardware, and then they can virtualize that in the internet and then allow you to work virtually from the internet anywhere you want.
Business data backup and storage falls primarily into two categories. The fastest growing is called cloud, or backstopping all company data and systems in a secured off-site facility. Cloud is replacing the tried and true but sometimes troubled tape storage system, which has been in use for years.
There are ways now that instead of buying the equipment, that you can almost lease the equipment in what they call the cloud of the internet. And you put that then in a secure facility, a secure data center, someone that has built a facility that's designed just to house computer equipment in a secure 24/7 environment that is designed to withstand all the disasters that we mentioned above. Online storage usually has a monthly fee associated with it, and businesses need to understand that, whereas the tape's usually a one-time event, and then I purchase new tapes every so often. Online storage is going to be a reoccurring cost. But then I don't have to worry about, well, what do I need to do with my tape, or was my tape in the building when the fire happened and the sprinklers went on.
It's clear securing your data in the event of a disaster will be one of the most important decisions you should make. But there is another question that seems to always be there, everywhere. How much and how often should I back up my records and systems?
We usually see that folks keep 7 generations of data, which is 7 consecutive days, and then they may keep 3 weeks of a Saturday, for instance, so then that would give them ability to go back 1 month. Some businesses in the financial area, they keep data longer, so they may have a monthly backup that they would do, that they could go back in time.
And it's important to know what the legal obligations are for backup in your company's field, and they are different from segment to segment. But above all, the single most important factor in recovering from a disaster is this: plan for one, and practice that plan to make sure it works.
You need to test your plan. So I have a plan, and it's great, and it's sat on the shelf, and then all of a sudden the disaster hits, and I pull it out, and everything's outdated. And that's worthless to you. It comes back to, again, to the risk question. Individuals that have low tolerance for risk maybe need to test their plan quarterly, semi-annually. Folks that have a high tolerance, we would recommend at least once a year. And you pull it out, you look at it, and if you're a small business, sometimes we recommend, as the business owner, you just come in today and you declare a pandemic event. You tell everyone to go home. And that is the best test on what is wrong with your scenario. If you give people time to plan ahead, they'll work around the system and you won't identify the holes. And it's the holes and the shortcomings that you really need to identify.
It starts with a business plan, the roadmap on how your business will operate. Numbers are crunched, projections made, risk is evaluated. Risk as in how much and what kinds of risk can one tolerate. That's why most owners turn to business insurance as a way to manage the future and all the unknowns it brings. And while a business can insure themselves for hundreds of situations, most industry people think insurance really falls into 2 categories.
The most simplistic that people are probably aware of is property. You know, if you have a building that you own or contents that you have, what kind of risk do you have in that? What kind of investment have you made in that property, whether it be a structure or contents or equipment or tools, whatever you may have. You also have a component of risk from a liability standpoint. That's the one that tends to just be a phrase out there, well, I need liability insurance. Well, what does that involve? Because there's a lot of different ways you come into an issue where you would need liability insurance. From simplistic enough as that someone just slips and falls on your property, premise liability. For contractors, they have a coverage for liability called completed operations. So if I'm a plumber and I do a job, my job is done, and 6 months later we have a problem down in someone's basement, my liability insurance is there. It also can get liability insurance. There's other components as far as protecting employees, as far as we haven't gotten to work comp, but employer's liability, whereas maybe you fire an employee. If you're starting to grow and you're a small business and you hire your first employee, you may want to start looking at employment practices liability insurance. That would be liability as if that employee were to come back to sue you for wrongful termination or harassment or those kinds of things. There's a business income component to it. To whereas if I'm a business owner and I'm operating my business, let's just say I've been up and going for 12 months, okay, a year, and suddenly I have a fire to my building. That business income protection provides, it'll go back and say, okay, for the last 6 months, for example, you've been making about X amount of dollars per month in your business that you can no longer operate. So until you get up and running again, until we get you that building up again, we're going to continue to pay that income you lost while you're down. So it provides that gap for the interruption. And another component of it is called extra expense, which actually pays for, if I make widgets, for example, again, and my building burns down, it allows me to rent a new location temporarily until I get my building put back together again as well. From an insurance standpoint, I want to get to know certainly what the entire entity of the business, what is their purpose in the business itself. First of all, if they're a manufacturer, what are they manufacturing? If they're in sales, what are they selling? If they're a contractor, what are they building? And so when I'm talking to a new business owner, I want to know what the risk element is. What are they coming at in terms of assets, whether it be the property that they have, or maybe just the financial backing that they're getting somewhere when it comes to liability insurance. So from the minute we sit down, risk is a strong component we need to talk about. There's different calculators and factors we can use. Certainly property is a little more concrete. We have an idea of how much the building would cost to replace, or we know how much the contents are there. But when we look at liability insurance, it is, how much of that risk, what type of protection do you need as far as, do you need $500,000 of general liability? Do you need $1 million liability? Maybe you need $1 million liability and a $5 million umbrella. There's a lot of different numbers out there, and so we actually have some financial calculators we can sit down and go, okay, here's what we think, is probably a comfortable level for you. And at the same time, the business owner has their own risk tolerance. And some business owners are willing to take a little more risk on, and some, want to be very much protected. So there's a level of kind of between what we would suggest and recommend and what they're comfortable with as well. Self-insurance, if you come across someone that has very, very deep pockets, is an option, but the reality, what people will typically find out is there may be a component of, maybe I'll do some self-insurance, but also use the insurance company's protection as well, where you can do a combination there, because at some point the insurance companies are going to give you a pretty favorable price when you're insuring half of the exposure yourself, for example. For example, property, you can't insure land. So to answer your question, no. Yes, there are things you cannot insure. When it gets to tangible things on property, though, the reason why I laugh is you could probably find a company out there that would write insurance for about anything. We can ask the question. It seems simplistic, but where do you want to, where do you see yourself, or where do you want to be in 10 years with this business? And the reality is, one hiccup, whether it be someone slipping and falling on the property, or an auto accident where someone gets injured, or their building being damaged because of wind or fire, without proper insurance, they're done. And at the end of the day, I've asked people, do you want the insurance company to pay for the $350,000, or do you want to pay for that? And so it's just basically, again, it's simply just a transfer of risk, where we're basically saying, I don't want to take this entire risk on myself. I want to, for a premium, have someone else take that risk on for me.
The Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union is based in Decatur, Illinois, a town that's seen its fair share of tornadoes and severe weather. So where do you begin? As in most, if not all cases, a master plan for surviving any kind of disaster includes coordinating various strategies. One for customers, another for employees, still another for company vendors. But none may be more important than having a fail-safe plan for making sure your company data is safe and secure.
Communicating with your management staff, your CEO, CFO, and understanding what those services are that are critical to the organization is a key. Once you understand those, then you can develop a plan that corresponds with those services, with those needs. Like I said, first going through realizing what our critical systems are, coming up with a good plan for an off-site location, and building that second data center so that we can be up as fast as possible. And one of the things, without getting too technical, that's really helping us in that is virtualization. Being able to virtualize an environment, not relying on solely one set of hardware, being able to, instead of going to tape and being up within a few days, we can be up within a few hours. We communicate a lot through our email and through our voicemail, so that would be a very critical system for us, is to make sure we keep that up and running.
We've got a core group of people who are responsible for making sure that the branches are getting open, that we're getting the information out to the employees, that if one facility is for some reason inaccessible, where those employees are supposed to go to work, getting the information out to the membership, whether that be via our website, via radio, TV, whatever happens, we have to let employees, we need to let membership know what is the plan that is in effect. When we start developing the plan, the first thing we start doing is setting priorities of if something happens, what are the first things that need to be brought back up? And so for us, that's going to be our core system, which will handle our members' accounts. And then from there, it's the remote access, being able to make sure all the ATM connections are working, online banking, those type of services. So there's really not an option for us to be unavailable to them, especially in the case of disaster. More than likely, it's not going to hit just us. It's going to be hitting others in the community. So in a situation like that, they need to have access to their money. They need to be able to buy emergency goods, whatever the case may be. So we have to make sure that we are fully available to those people.
Part of our disaster recovery plan has in it for each branch a location for staff to go if a tornado were to hit during business hours, if a fire were to break out during business hours. And we laughed because it's almost like going back to grade school when you did your fire drill, your tornado drills, that's what you have to do with your staff so that your staff is prepared, because it may not only be your staff that's in the building, we may have members in the building that we have to make sure that they're safe and secure as well. A part of our disaster recovery plan is a list of our vendors, so that in the case of a disaster, we know who to contact if things need to be changed, so that our business continues, so that our members see no interruption. We have all of that as part of the plan. You can't prepare for everything, you plan, and that's part of the planning process. Every time you sit and you talk about the plan, I think something else comes up. What if this were to happen? So all you can really do is continually revisit your plan, be familiar with it, know what it is, because I'm sure that there's always something that you think of. Anytime you think, okay, we've got everything, then something else is thrown out there.
You just never can be, because if you get too comfortable, you get too lax, that's when something happens. Again, as I said, if you pull the plan out and if you haven't been working with it, haven't been getting it updated to whatever the current technologies or the current needs and products and services, then that's when you find out the plan doesn't work, and that's not acceptable.
May 2008, the small town of Windsor, Colorado was raked by an EF3 tornado. Among the buildings hit, a daycare center with 130 children and staff inside. They had no tornado shelter, yet everyone survived. Not having a tornado shelter was not an option for Katie Stell, the namesake of Katie's Kids Learning Centers in Bloomington and Normal, Illinois. When plans went on the drawing board for her new facility, her contractor father recommended incorporating a 900 square foot reinforced room that could serve as a storm shelter. Drawing on her past experience, Katie agreed.
I'd worked in a facility previous that children were huddled in bathrooms and hallways, and I just knew that that was terrifying for the children at that time. So in order to be able to have a classroom where they feel safe and comfortable really was ideal whenever we were creating Katie's Kids. Hi, welcome to Katie's Kids Learning Center. This is our tornado shelter. It's also one of our infant classrooms, so in the event of a storm, we go right on into the classroom. My father and also the architect went together to make sure that we still created a home-like environment, so we do have a window in the tornado shelter. A lot of folks say, well, how in the world do you have a window in a tornado shelter? How is that possible? But everything is FEMA approved, so from the windows to the doors in the classroom, the exterior door as well as the interior door are all FEMA approved. We have 135 children on site each and every single day, so 135 children as well as anywhere from 30 to 40 staff at a given time, so we can guarantee fit 175 people in there. To be able to have them together with their teachers and with the other classmates and other friends or siblings in the facility, they're able to go right on into a classroom where they're able to continue playing and having fun, and it gives parents a great peace of mind to know that the children are safe. We've honestly been able to get them all in the tornado shelter in about a minute and a half, which has been phenomenal. We work very hard to make sure that they do know the process and that they can immediately get right on into that classroom. We strategically place the tornado shelter between our 2 infant rooms, so that way we can quickly evacuate the infants and their cribs into that classroom. We have monthly tornado drills that we will exit each of the classrooms, go right on into the tornado shelter, and the kids will just sit, sing together with their classmates and teachers, and they tend to think it's a party, so it's a good time. Any kind of closings, whether it be for winter storm advisory or anything, immediately that's contacted through the local radio stations, as well as we contact our webmaster to make sure that he gets that on the internet immediately on our homepage, so that way families they always know to either call the facility and you can get hopefully some answers that way, and if not, then they can either listen to the radio or go onto our web and they can find the information they'll need. We have a security system here at the facility that as soon as there's a warning or anything does occur here on site, immediately there's a phone tree of who's notified. Typically it is my father first. If we're not able to get a hold of him, it goes straight to Mo Kelly, part owner of Katie's Kids, as well as myself. So once the 3 of our contacts are made, then we go ahead and contact administrators, teachers, child development specialists in the classroom, and then just kind of work our way down that way. We've had a couple of different warnings, and it usually is what we did. So we all went in there, and it was of an evening one night where families were included and all, and we just sang songs and ate snacks and tried to make the best of, tight corners. But it was nice to know that everything was okay, and the parents, the peace of mind that was across their face when they walked in the facility was just priceless.
As we have seen, disasters come in every shape and size, as do the plans to recover from them. They happen on their terms and time. They can destroy a business. Before your company finds itself in that situation, here are some final thoughts on things to consider as you build your disaster preparedness plan. First, develop a continuity plan that includes possible alternative operational sites. Make sure backup sites have critical equipment, including data files and supplies. It should be a top priority to have data secured. Most companies are using off-site storage. All are incorporating redundant plans. How often and how much you back up your files will vary from business to business. Find a plan that works for you. Gather all current contract information for employees, vendors, and customers, and you should have precise contact information for each of these. Fine-tune your disaster communication plan, including having more than several options. Educate your employees on every phase of your plan, including how, when, and where they are to evacuate or go to a storm shelter on your property. You cannot underestimate the importance of having regularly scheduled drills. They are the best way to find flaws in your plan. They give you and your employees peace of mind. Many businesses have emergency cash management systems in place to handle cash flow. Most have some kind of insurance to help manage risk and keep the doors open. Most importantly, today is the time to stop and evaluate your plan with an eye on the future, knowing it's impossible to predict where or when something catastrophic may happen. If you have no plan, today is a great day to start building one. In the final analysis, at the core of good business planning is one vitally important element. We can't plan on a calamity, but we can certainly prepare for one. The question becomes, are you ready when that day comes?